Okay, real talk. There was a Sunday night not too long ago where I was sitting at my kitchen at 10 p.m. Most educators know this feeling. Rewriting the same reading passage for the third time. One version for my students on grade level, one version with more scaffolding, and one version that was basically a completely different document. And I remember thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then I thought, well, it probably is. I just didn't know what it was yet. Welcome to, well, this is a little bit experimental, but welcome to what I'm calling my AI education podcast. I'm Madeline Stoddard. I'm an educator. I run a program for young girl inventors called inventHERS. And this semester, I took a graduate course that completely changed the way I look at technology. Not just technology, but teaching and my own professional practice. And today, I want to share all of that with you. The wins, the mess. Because let's be honest, there was plenty of that. The tools I swear by. The ones I abandoned. The moments that genuinely surprised me. And because I think that this part gets skipped way too often, the stuff that kept me up at night. Like, ethically. This is not a sponsored video. I'm not going to tell you the one tool that completely changed my classroom, because that just doesn't exist. I'm going to give you honest, research back a personal account of what it actually looks like to go from a casual ChatGPT user to someone building a whole business with AI as her co-pilot. Stay with me. I can't promise, but I hope it's worth it. So let me set the scene. When I walked into this course, I thought, I'm fine. I had a paid ChatGPT subscription. I dabbled in Dolly. I'd heard of Claude, used Perplexity like once or twice, played with Magic School. I felt like, okay, I know enough. Well, I actually was really behind. Not because I was doing anything wrong, but because I had confused familiarity with fluency. And those are two completely different things. Familiarity is knowing that a tool exists. Fluency is knowing when to use it, how to prompt it, well, and why it's the right choice for a specific task. There's actually a really important concept in research here. These two researchers, they began writing in 2024 in the Columbia Journal of Education and Learning Sciences. They put it really well. They argue that for AI to reach its full potential in education, teachers need to know how to combine technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge. Not just like use the tool, but integrate it with purpose. And unfortunately, that was the gap that I was living in. When you first start out, generally you know about ChatGPT, but the reality is there are so many AI tools and they multiply weekly. I feel like I would finally get comfortable with one platform and then see 3 new ones in my discussion board posts about people that were raving about this tool. It kind of created this low grade anxiety. Like I was always running slightly behind on a train that was picking up speed. Andrew, co-founder of Google Brain, who essentially built the infrastructure for modern AI structure in education, has said that AI is the new electricity. It's not a feature, it's a foundation. And just like how you don't think about how electricity works every time you flip a light switch, the goal is to get to a point where AI fluency is just embedded in how you work. Yeah, I still wasn't there yet, but I wanted to be. So here's the pivot moment. 1 week into our course discussion board, someone shared how they were using Magic School, a tool I had heard about before, but I had never really used. But they used it in a way that I had never considered. I'd been using it to generate lesson plans. Pretty basic stuff. But this educator, they were using it to build differentiated scaffolding for students with learning disabilities. Same tool, completely different application, way higher impact. And something I wasn't thinking creatively enough about what these tools could do. I was already using AI to replace tasks that I already did, but I wasn't really using it to do things that I couldn't do before. That's something that Oxford's 2024 research collection on AI and STEM education speaks to directly. They describe AI's transformative potential not just as a time saver, but as a tool that can genuinely reshape how teachers make instructional decisions, moving from reactive to proactive, from one size fits all teaching to truly responsive practice. So I put my inventHERS cap on and I started experimenting. I tried GenSpark to build a presentation from scratch. And I want to be honest with you, I was skeptical. I'm a presentation creator. I'm a Canva person. I have very specific visual preferences. But GenSpark, it took my content outline and turned it into something that looked like a designer made it. Now, I still had to put my touches on it, don't get me wrong. But it showed me its thinking as it was built, the structure, the layout logic, even some of the CSS it was applying. The transparency was really cool. Next, I tried TeachShare, which is built specifically for educators, and discovered that it could generate worksheets that could be shared as interactive links, which is really cool. And it didn't even require students to sign in, which is even cooler. And it's not just cool for convenience. Well, thinking about data privacy and equity and teach access. Sorry, not teach access, tech access. That's not a small thing. I tried CuriPod for real-time formative assessment, which is something I really don't like to create as a teacher. Flint K-12 for invention research with my inventors, which Flint K through 12, that's something that not enough people are talking about. It's really neat. And of course, my beloved DALL-E to help kids who had strong ideas but couldn't sketch, to turn their concepts into visual prototypes that they could actually critique and improve. And gradually, tool by tool, project by project, something shifted. I stopped feeling like I was chasing AI and started to feel like I was actually using it with intentionality. Okay, I want to spend a few minutes here because I think that this is the part that matters most to teachers and arguably takes the most time. Differentiation. You know the word. You probably also felt the weight of it on a Sunday night when you're on your third version of the reading passage. Research by Nawaz, published in 2024 in the AI Edified Journal, found that AI tools that support pattern recognition, data analysis, and adaptive feedback can meaningfully develop higher order thinking skills in students. The exact skills that are the hardest to reach with generic, one size fits all materials. Here's what that looked like for me. For a lesson that I created on intellectual property, Own Your Idea, I created 2 differentiated versions of a student worksheet. One standard, one with more scaffolding, chunked tasks, guided response frames, clearer directional language. That used to take me an entire evening. And I love teaching, but I also have a life too. With AI, it took a fraction of that time, and the instructional integrity, it didn't suffer. But I want to be honest here too, because it's not all sunshine. We know that. Something that I typically have to go in and put my human touch on is the tone. The tone problem is real. AI generated materials can have like subtle flatness to them, especially when I'm talking to like elementary school kids.
Yes, ma'am?
They're technically correct, but they're really well organized, which is not actually like me. They don't sound like a human who knows these specific kids. And for differentiated materials, especially, that relationship quality in the language, it matters. A student who already struggles doesn't need instructions that feel clinical on top of the challenge. Faith Lee, if you don't know her, you should look her up. She's incredible. She's a Stanford professor and co-director of the Human Centered AI Institute. She talks often about the importance of keeping the human in AI. Her work on human-centered AI is essentially about making sure the technology serves people, not the other way around. And I think that principle applies directly here. AI can scaffold the task. The relationship, that stays mine. The good news, and I've found this genuinely encouraging, is that the more you learn and use the tool, the more it learns about you and your voice. So don't just put make it better. My Claude outputs now sound noticeably more like me than they did 3 months ago, which on the other hand, you could say that's really scary. The inauthenticity problem improves with familiarity, which honestly is a good reason sometimes to commit to fewer tools more deeply rather than sampling everything at once. Now to the ethical stuff. And this is really complicated, but I promise you I would go here. And here we go. The ethical dimensions of AI in education, very real. And I think a lot of educators are either completely overwhelmed by it, which I was, or they're kind of like quietly ignoring it, which I can understand, but I can't endorse. Let's name the things that I think about. Data privacy. Every time I use an AI tool in a student facing context, I'm making a decision about where that data goes. Is the platform FERPA compliant? COPA compliant? COPPA? I don't know. I usually just read the letters. Does it require students to create accounts? Are student responses being used to train the model? These are not paranoid questions. You're not a conspiracy theorist. They are professional responsibilities. Lodi, writing in 2025 on AI ethics in K through 12 STEM education, puts it bluntly. The conversation about whether to use AI in schools is largely over. AI is here. The urgent conversation now is about how, with rigorous attention to equity, bias, and policy alignment. Algorithmic bias. This one is sneaky. AI models are trained on data, and data reflects the world as it is, including all its inequities. If I'm using an AI tool to generate materials for students from underrepresented communities, I need to be asking, whose knowledge is centered here? Whose language? Whose cultural context? Environmental impact. This is the one that's often talked about. The water and the energy consumption of large AI systems is substantial. I'm not going to pretend like I've solved this one. I haven't. But I think part of responsible AI use is at least knowing it's real. It's a real cost. It's not an invisible one. Authorship and academic integrity. This is tough. For me personally, and my work with students, I've landed in a clear place on this. AI, it's a thinking partner, not an author. Everything that goes out under my name gets reviewed, edited, and genuinely engaged with by me. I never paste and submit. And I teach my students at inventHERS the same standard. Jeffrey Hinton, the Nobel Prize winning researcher, often called the godfather of AI, has been remarkably candid about recent years in the risks of AI development moving faster than our ethical frameworks can keep up. He's not anti-AI, but he is pro-caution. And I think this is exactly the right posture for educators. Not fear, not blind enthusiasm, informed caution. Ben Gio, who founded the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms, has similarly called for stronger governance around the frameworks surrounding AI, arguing that without deliberate policy towards these structures, the risks of bias, surveillance, and harm disproportionately falls on the most vulnerable communities. In education, these communities are often our students. So, what do I do with all of this? Well, I built myself a checklist. Before I adopt any new tool, I run through these questions. What problem am I actually solving? Is there a privacy risk? Does this require student accounts? Does it widen or narrow equity gaps? Is there a human review step? It's not perfect. I'm not claiming perfection here, but it slows me down enough to be deliberate. And deliberate is what I'm going for. Okay, here's the part that I'm genuinely most excited about. inventHERS is a program I run for young girl inventors. We work through an innovation cycle, problem identification, research, ideation, prototyping, pitching. And this semester, I stopped being a subject I was studying and started to be a tool I was building with. I now use AI to help design my business and build curriculum, to draft newsletters, to brainstorm program strategy. I have an automated monthly newsletter workflow, drafting in Google Docs, automating through Zapier. sending through Gmail. That keeps my community engaged without requiring me to manually execute every send. I'm still doing it, don't get me wrong, but it's just me. Building a business is really hard on your own, especially with no money. This is helpful. Daphne, co founder of Coursera, and one of the pioneers of AI and educational technology, talks about AI's potential to democratize access to high quality learning. That resonates deeply with what I'm building. inventHERS serves girls who don't often see themselves in invention spaces, and AI tools are helping me reach more of them faster with better materials than I could produce alone. But here's what I actually think the most important thing I'm building is: a curriculum for young inventors that teaches ethical AI use from the inside out, not as a lesson about AI. If you've heard of Add Women in Stir, it's not Add AI in Stir, as a lens through which they approach every phase of their invention work. Prompt thoughtfully, evaluate critically, understand the stakes, own your ideas. Don't give them all to ChatGPT. The CEO of Google DeepMind, the lab that built AlphaGo and AlphaFold, he's described AI as a tool for accelerating human discovery, not replacing it, accelerating it. And that's exactly the frame that I want my students to carry. AI as an accelerant for their ideas, not a substitute for having them. All right, we're getting close to the end, and I want to give you the real takeaways, the stuff that I would tell myself a semester ago. 1, overwhelm is information, not failure. Feeling overwhelmed by AI tools is not a sign that you're behind or that you don't belong in the conversation. It's a sign that the field is moving fast and you're paying attention. Good job. Work with that feeling. Don't run from it. Go deeper with fewer tools. I wasted a lot of time sampling tools I never went back to. The tools that changed my practice were the ones that I actually stayed with, that learned my patterns and got fluent in them. Pick 2 or 3. Go deep. The thinking you do before prompting is the real game, like the whole game. Chief AI scientist at Meta, pioneer of neutral networks, has said that AI systems are only as good as the representations they work with. You've heard the saying in plain English: garbage in, garbage out. If you don't clarify your purpose, your audience, and your goals before you prompt, the output will be polished and useless. That pre-work is yours to do. AI can't do that for you. 4, ethical use is not a module, it's a habit. It doesn't have a finish line. You don't complete it once and move on. It's a posture, ongoing, evolving, and worth revisiting every time a landscape shifts, which is constantly right now. AI is here to stay. The question isn't whether, the question is how. Co-founder of OpenAI, instrumental in developing ChatGPT and DALL-E, has described AI's trajectory as essentially irreversible. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to get intentional. So let's returning back to that Sunday night at my kitchen table. Third version of that reading passage, 10 p.m. I still have nights like that, but they're rarer now. And when I do sit down to differentiate something, I don't start from scratch. I start with a thinking partner, and then I make it mine. AI, it didn't make me a better teacher, but it gave me more space to be one. More time for the parts that actually require me. The relationship, the judgment, the care, and more capacity to build something that I couldn't have built alone. If you're an educator who's been on the fence about this, I get it. The overwhelm, it's real. The ethical concerns, yeah, they're real. The learning curve, yeah, it's real too. The version of you that's informed, intentional, and fluent in these tools is going to be able to do things that the version of you that's avoiding the conversation simply can't. And your students, they deserve both versions of you, trying their hardest to show up for students because you're an awesome teacher. Thanks for listening. And if this resonated, share it with an educator who needs to hear it. And if you want to follow along with more stories and opinions like these, be sure to check out inventHERS.org. Take care of yourselves, take care of your students, and I'll talk to you next time.